All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a totally different way to think about setbacks. Seriously, we're going to tear down some of that old advice you've probably heard a million times and build a new framework, one for transforming the force of failure into actual fuel for your future. Let's dive right in. So, you've heard it, right? Fail forward. It's everywhere. Just pick yourself up and keep stumbling along. But, you know, have you ever really stopped to think about that? Is that actually the best strategy? I mean, is just surviving the hit the same thing as really growing from it? Because let's be honest, when you really look at it, failing forward is usually just passive survival. It's about taking a hit, maybe picking up a tiny lesson, but mostly just trying to stay upright, you know? It's endurance for sure, but it's not a deliberate strategic move. It's not a plan. And this is where it gets tricky, because this creates what you could call the fail-forward trap. It's this cycle where we just get used to absorbing blows, instead of actually harnessing their energy. And that passive approach, well, it keeps us from pulling out the real lessons that are hidden inside every single one of those setbacks. So, what's the alternative? Well, instead of just passively failing forward, this framework suggests something much more active. It suggests you can ricochet. And this isn't about just stumbling on, no. This is about launching forward. It is the huge difference between just surviving and having a real deliberate strategy for growth. And this really gets to a core idea in what the source material calls the Waymaker philosophy. You see, while most people just take the hit and kind of fall forward, a Waymaker, and that's someone who's actively forging their own path, they learn to take the force of that very impact and use it as fuel, launching themselves in a brand new and much more purposeful direction. Okay, so how do we actually do this? Well, the Ricochet Framework is surprisingly simple. It's built on just two key steps. First, you have to convert the impact of the failure, and second, you launch with intention into whatever comes next. So let's break down exactly what those two things mean. All right, let's get into step one, convert the impact. Now, this is all about what you do right after a failure, like in the immediate aftermath. The key thing here is it's not about ignoring the pain or pretending it didn't happen. No, it's about deliberately, and I mean deliberately processing it. And the main tool for this is something called the kinetic pause. It's actually really simple. Instead of that gut reaction, that immediate emotional response we all have, you just pause. You take a deliberate breath. And the goal is simple. You're trading in that unintentional reaction for a truly intentional response. And that pause, that's everything. That's where the learning happens. It's your big opportunity to see the pain of failure not as some enemy you have to run from, but as a teacher. It's you choosing to finally become a better student of your own mistakes. So this whole conversion process, it really happens in three phases. One, you pause. You literally take a step back to get a wider view. Two, you diagnose what happened. You check your assumptions, you figure out what was really going on. And finally, three, you extract the truth, the core lesson, and then and only then do you decide how to best apply yourself moving forward. Okay, that brings us to step two. So you've converted the impact, you've got your lesson. Now it's time to launch with intention. This is where you take all that new understanding and channel it into focused, disciplined action. And this entire launch, it's powered by this idea of intentional living. Look, this isn't just about being busy for the sake of being busy. It's a whole lifestyle where your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all purposefully lined up to get you the results you actually want over the long haul. And this right here, this is a huge mental shift. The launch isn't about crossing your fingers and waiting for a lucky break. Nope. It's about really understanding that the life you want, the progress you're trying to make, it's really just a few good, intentional decisions away. So if you wanted a formula, here it is in its simplest form. You take that intentional living, that purposeful mindset, and you add relentless action to it. What do you get? Progress. Real, measurable progress. That's the engine. That's what drives you forward after you ricochet. Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. Because this whole framework, it isn't just a tactic, It's a complete, fundamental shift in how you see failure itself. This really is the core belief of a Waymaker. For them, failure just isn't a dead end. It's not the end of the story. It's raw material. It becomes the essential stuff you need to build something stronger, something better than what you had before. The perfect analogy for this is a blacksmith's forge. Just think about it. They take this lump of raw metal, and what do? They put it through extreme heat and incredible pressure. The fire burns off all the junk, and the hammer strikes give it shape. Well, in the exact same way, we can use the heat and the pressure of our failures to forge a stronger character, a better plan, a more resilient version of ourselves. So this really leaves us with one final thought. Look, the hits are going to come. That's pretty much a guarantee in life, right? The only question is, how are you going to respond? The next time you get knocked down by a setback, are you just going to stumble forward, or are you going to choose to convert that energy and ricochet